New York's prison system incarcerates more than 34,000 people. It employs nearly 19,000 workers. It's a huge industry in the state and in the North Country. But reporting on what happens behind bars can be tough. Prison guards are largely banned from talking to reporters. Inmates face a lot of restrictions over who and how they communicate with the outside world. Today we meet a journalist who knows the system from the inside and is now reporting on it on the outside from Malone. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Morja Wealth Management, serving the North Country for 3 generations. MorjaWM.com. Advisory services offered through Hightower Advisors LLC. Securities are offered through Hightower Securities LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. And Kinney Drugs, now accepting S3 Nations benefits and OTC Network Wellness benefit cards for eligible over-the-counter health items. Details at KinneyDrugs.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Tuesday, July 7th. First up, a new report says violence in New York State prisons was rising before the recent beating deaths of 2 incarcerated men. Jimmy Vielkind reports for the New York Public News Network.
The use of force by corrections officers rose steadily in the decade before guards fatally beat prisoners Robert Brooks and Messiah Nanchui in 2024 and 2025. That's one finding of an outside review of the state correctional system commissioned by Governor Hochul after the deaths and a 3-week illegal guard strike last year. Assemblymember Mikhail Salaj is a Nassau County Democrat who has pushed for more prison oversight.
The killing of Robert Brooks and Messiah Nanchui weren't just a few bad actors, that it's a systemic issue that is something that we need to address.
Hochul says she wants a safe and secure prison system for both prisoners and guards. In Albany, I'm Jimmy Vielkind for the New York Public News Network.
Today we're going to meet a journalist who covers New York's complex, sprawling, and now crisis-ridden prison system. He lives in Malone, and he brings an insider perspective because he was once behind bars himself. Emily Russell has his story.
J.B. Nicholas is standing at his kitchen counter. His laptop is tilted open, and he's got a mug full of coffee. Nicholas is on deadline.
Tell me what you got going on here. What are you working on?
So I'm reporting on a CO at a jail in the Mohawk Valley. Got exposed to a synthetic drug, and she was in a drug-induced coma. She couldn't breathe.
Other news outlets had reported on the drug exposure, but Nicholas knew the correction officer's name. He knew specific details about how she was exposed. His secret? Finding sources on the inside, whether it's other officers, inmates, or just anyone who was there when it happened.
So you're using sources to kickstart your reporting, but then you're verifying and corroborating their stories in other ways independently.
Nicholas runs his own website. It's called The Freelance News. He covers prisons from every angle, whether it's guards getting exposed to drugs, inmates getting beaten by guards or other inmates. But nailing down the facts of any prison story is inherently difficult.
The prison is behind a wall. It's just covered in darkness. It's occluded, right? And not only that, but the people who inhabit these places, the prisoners and the guards, they're both super suspicious and secretive.
Nicholas knows this because he's lived it. He served nearly 13 years behind bars after being convicted of manslaughter. Nicholas was 19 at the time. He's now in his mid-50s. Nicholas gets quiet when I ask him about the crime.
I've done my time. I regret what happened. I'm just done talking about it.
When he was in prison, Nicholas earned his associate's degree. After he was released, he returned home to New York City, where he got a bachelor's in creative writing from NYU.
But of course, I couldn't find a job being a creative writer anywhere. So I was like, I need a hobby to keep me busy and out of trouble. So I picked up a camera.
Nicholas would ride his bike around the city. If something newsy happened or someone famous was out and about, he'd snap some photos. His first big break came in 2007. A man had passed out and fallen into the subway tracks. A construction worker climbed down and barrel-hugged the man just as the train arrived. When Nicholas got to the scene, the construction worker was sitting on the back of an ambulance. He remembers the light blue beanie the worker was wearing.
and it had a dark grease stain on it. And as soon as I looked at the picture and I realized it, and I said, well, that's how close the train came to killing him.
Nicholas knew it was a great shot, and he was right. He sold it to Newsday, and it was the cover photo the next day. Over the next decade, Nicholas built a career as a photojournalist, working for the New York Post and other tabloids. He plugs an external hard drive into his computer. His photo archives from that time are deep and diverse.
Here's a folder from former Governor Eliot Spitzer, next to a folder of Steven Spielberg filming West Side Story.
In 2015, Nicholas pivoted to investigative reporting. His first story was a big one. An incarcerated man had been raped and was then put in solitary confinement, where he later died by suicide. It turned out that a correction officer had known that inmate. He had actually written a letter trying to get the inmate out of solitary before he died.
And I remember finding that letter with his name on it, and then I found his number. And I did some old school reporting, which is what a lot of this is. And I called him up, and like his daughter answered the phone. It was a summer evening. He lives in the Catskills.
Nicholas says getting that correction officer to open up and talk on the record got him hooked on prison reporting. That piece was published by the Daily Beast. Like so many of his stories since, Nicholas says his goal is to humanize both the people who live and work in New York's prisons.
No side in this is black and white. They're both gray. So, there's humans on both sides, and you have to recognize that first and foremost before you jump into this.
In 2022, Nicholas moved up to Malone for a relationship. By 2024, after nearly a decade of prison reporting, Nicholas says he was ready to move on from the beat. But then, on Christmas Eve that year, a huge story broke. A Black incarcerated man had been beaten to death by officers at a prison near Utica. Attorney General Letitia James shared body camera footage of the fatal beating of Robert Brooks.
These videos are shocking and disturbing, and I advise all to take appropriate care before choosing to watch them.
Nicholas jumped on the story. Over the next month, he published a piece nearly every day, sometimes twice a day. In the months that followed, Nicholas also made the 3.5-hour drive multiple times down to Utica, where a group of officers was on trial for murdering Brooks. Last fall, Nicholas was interviewed by The New Yorker for a lengthy piece on the state's prison system. That article was framed in part by Nicholas's own reporting. He says he feels like the last 30 years of his life prepared him for that exact moment, reporting on the aftermath of Robert Brooks's murder.
It was just a story that I felt that my entire life had almost led up to reporting. Because of my experience as a prisoner and my experience as a reporter, it was just those two things fused together. It was just built for me.
Nicholas says prison stories by other news outlets can sometimes be bland and rely too much on press releases rather than focusing on the real people on the inside. That's not the case for his own work, which can sometimes come off as surprisingly blunt. For example, he describes the group of guards that killed Robert Brooks as the, quote, beat-up squad. Nicholas says his goal is to be fair and balanced while also being emotional and evocative. After all, both guards and inmates face the risk of violence behind bars every day.
Those are our people in there, right? And no matter what side that you're on, you want those people to get out of there alive.
In late May, the 11th and final officer in that case was convicted and sentenced to jail. Nicholas was there outside the courtroom in Utica when the officer arrived.
Any last words? Do you feel sorry at all for what happened?
The officer didn't comment. Right before he was sentenced, though, he did apologize to the Brooks family. He was then handcuffed and escorted out of the courtroom. Back at his home in Malone, Nicholas stays grounded by spending time with his family and through his hobbies. He's really into fly fishing. Plus, he grows vegetables in his backyard.
We grow the little cherry tomatoes all along this fence.
Wow.
And they get sun almost all day long up here.
Later this summer, he'll make big batches of spaghetti sauce with the tomatoes he grows. As for his reporting, Nicholas says he may shift from prisons and criminal justice to focus on issues like data centers and public surveillance. One thing's for certain, though, Nicholas says he'll be a journalist until the day he dies. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio, Malone.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Michael Farley of Canton and Ramon Vasquez and Michael Hart of Malone. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.